In this video, we're going to move on with the row minefield. I'm going to do a video on sighting and marking for emplacement. Now, really, this is the very first step in a row minefield. I know I'm getting to this kind of late, but I figured the other videos were a little bit up there in importance. This task is typically done by the platoon leader or the senior non-commissioned officer. Depends on who's available, who's still alive, and so forth, really. Now, this will be part of the next video that I'm going to do, which will be the platoon level task. So I'll be putting all this together using the same diagram. But the platoon leader's been given a task, so he's got to come up here now and he's got to sight where the minefield's going to be. He's been told he's going to have to put in a disrupt. Now we have a hardball road here with another kind of side road coming in that's also hardball, means that they're both asphalt or paved. We're not going to put the mines on the road, and we're not going to be able to dig them in. So the road is going to be covered with a different type of obstacle system. We have here a hillside or ridge. The side of the hill was cut into to allow the road to come in, so this is an abrupt drop off here. This space in between here is farm field. It is more than wide enough for a row minefield. Now, the dimensions on a disrupt or row minefield with a disrupt intent is 250 meters for a frontage, and it is 100 meters in depth from the Alpha row to the Charlie road. There's only 3 rows. There is no IOE on disrupt. So when he comes in, first thing he's got to do is find where he's going to put that minefield. And when he's considering that, he also has to find 2 landmarks. Because you always have to have 2 landmarks in case one of them gets destroyed in the battle. Because when you come back in later for removing the minefield or someone else has to come in, they have to be able to know exactly where it's at. You never go off of GPS coordinates, global positioning system coordinates, because they're never accurate enough. You need to be super accurate on the location of every single mine, and you're just not going to get that with GPS. Yeah, I don't care what the technology is now. I don't care how close it gets. Okay, it's not accurate enough, because when you're dealing with mines, you have to be accurate within a few inches, not a few meters or a few feet. So he comes in, and what he chooses for his 2 landmarks, we got the intersection here. Well, there's the possibility that intersection could be destroyed with artillery or something like that. So what he's going to do, he and a couple troops, to include his vehicle with driver, they're going to put in a long picket down here. It'll be within, say, a meter of the road down there, and it will be pounded flush down into the ground, straight up and down. And he makes note on that on his minefield record report. Up here on the peak, there's a very large rock up here, and he'll consider that as part of his landmark. Well, right next to that, what he's going to do, he's going to pound in a long picket all the way into the ground if he can. If he can't, then he'll probably just have to go off of the rock, but you need to keep in mind that it's very possible that rock will get knocked out of place when the battle starts. And by large rock, I'm not talking something that's, say 6 feet by 6 feet. I'm talking something that's like 10 feet by 10 feet or 20 feet by 20 feet, some large boulder. You want something that the terrain feature or the landmark is not going to change in the battle. You do not want to go off of trees. That was one big thing that I always was told, never go off of large trees because they can be blown apart. Intersections on roadways is a good option. One thing I was told, if you do not put a picket right in the corner by a intersection, go off the very dead center of the intersection. Use that as your landmark. Points on top of hillsides and mountains would also work. But be advised, you want it within reasonable distance to the minefield, because what you're going to be doing, you're going to be pacing it out, getting that measurement from that landmark to the Charlie row on your minefield, or the last row on your minefield, depending on its depth. So you want the landmark, you know, fairly close, preferably within a few hundred meters. You don't want it a kilometer or a mile or more away. You want it very close. So now we come in, he's decided he's going to lay it right across here. So the first thing he's going to find is Charlie 1. We're going to put our Charlie 1 right here. So then he's got to get the distance and the azimuth from that landmark. Going from here to here. He needs the distance from this point to here. And the azimuth going from this point to here. Once he gets to that point, he's going to want to mark it. That's going to be the start row marker. Now, what we'll do on this one, we'll do our start row markers as VS17 panels. So he'll have a VS17 panel at that point. He then will go straight off of it 50 meters. And he'll pace it out and double check, make sure it's exactly 50 meters, and he's going to make sure he's going on the exact heading here. And that'll put him at his Bravo 1. At that point, he's going to put in his next VS17 panel. And he'll have his azimuth and distance going from his Charlie 1 to his Bravo 1. Then he'll go forward another 50 meters following the same azimuth. And that'll be his Alpha 1. Yes, I know this is not drawn to scale, so don't make a stink about that. I am freehanding this. And he also has to have the measurement between his Bravo 1 and Alpha 1. Now at that point, he's going to make a 90-degree turn. He'll do that by his azimuth and all that. So let's say he's going 0 degrees, we're going straight north on this. He's going to make a 90-degree turn. So his turn, he's going to be heading 270, going this direction. And he'll go out his 250 meters. Now every so often along the way, he'll put in his bicycle flags. Now the vehicle should be traveling with him, because you need to make sure that there's enough room for a vehicle to get through here on the side of the minefield when they're coming in to emplace the rows. I have put in minefields where the lieutenant did not do that, and then there was not enough room between the rows and the terrain feature. So then we had to completely reverse things, and we had to come through our 2 side instead of our 1 side. So the vehicle's traveling with, the vehicle's carrying the marking materials. He's got a couple troops with him that are assisting with verifying the pace and all that stuff too. They're coming through, they're putting in their alpha row. And when they get their 250 meters, they then have their alpha 2. And at that point, they put in another VS17 panel. At this point, he makes another 90-degree turn. So at this point, he'll be heading 180. And he'll move out his 50 meters. And then marks out where his Bravo 2 is at. So we have here our distance and azimuth on that. We got it on here. He emplaces his next VS17 panel marking Bravo 2. He then moves on another 50 meters to his Charlie 2 and places his VS17 panel. He'll then make a turn, and then he'll put in his Charlie row of markers, the flags. And when he's doing this, he's double checking his distance, making sure that he does have a square box. You know, he shouldn't get to the end down here and find out it's 300 meters. It should be 250. So he's verifying, he's double checking. We got our Charlie mapped out. Now he'll go back to his Bravo row, and then he'll start putting in his lazy W. So he'll come in, he'll pace it out, get his azimuth and distance going from Bravo 1 to that turn, and then the next turn, and then the final turn. Now, as he's laying the stuff out, he's keeping pace, and they're putting in, the troops with him are putting in the bicycle flags for the intermediate markers. We get to our turn, marks it with a double, or crossed flags. This is as they're pacing it out and getting the azimuth. They're also putting in the markers here. This is not done afterwards. So we have our azimuth and distance going to this location for the turn, azimuth and distance going to this one, then the azimuth and distance going to this one, azimuth and distance going to this one. Now what he'll need to do at this point is he needs to go to his second landmark, and he needs to shoot an azimuth and distance from this location to the Charlie 2. So we got our picket pounded flush down here, going like that. Now, just to give you an indication here, I'll put on little arrows explaining the stuff here. So our distance and azimuth is going this direction. This will come into play when we do the Minefield record. From this point to this point. Then he'll have the azimuth and distance going from Charlie 1 to Bravo 1. He'll have the azimuth and distance going from Bravo 1 to Alpha 1. He will have down written on his paperwork the azimuth and distance going from Alpha 1 to Alpha 2. Now, for the Minefield record, we'll go from right to left. And it helps when you do your lines on the record if you put on little arrow markers like this indicating the direction that the azimuth and the distance is going. So when we're marking it on the Minefield record, azimuth and distance going from Bravo 1 to the first turn, azimuth and distance going from next turn to next turn, next turn to next turn, and then from the turn to Bravo 2. On the Minefield record, our azimuth and distance will be going from the Charlie 1 to Charlie 2. Now for this side, off of this second landmark, our azimuth and distance will be going from the landmark to Charlie 2. Azimuth and distance going from Charlie 2 to Bravo 2. Azimuth and distance going from Bravo 2 to Alpha 2. And that's how it would get marked out for the emplacement squads when they come in. There won't be lines on the ground, it'll just be the flags that are in place showing the squads where they're supposed to put the stuff in at. When you do the Minefield record, you'll want to have the lines on there. You'll want to have the arrows on it showing which direction that stuff is going. Now for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essay ons.